Welcome to Health and Wellness with Coach A.T. Moore. Today we have an amazing guest. I know I always say that before I introduce y'all to my audience, but today I mean it before and I mean it today. We have Dr. Keisha Siriboe. Did I say that right?
Siriboe.
Say it for the audience because I just want to make sure that it's pronounced correctly.
Sure, Dr. Keisha Siriboe.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Where are you checking in from right now?
I am in Baltimore, Maryland. That's
okay.
Where I am in my space, yeah.
Okay, I like it. Well, welcome to the show, Dr. Keisha. Now, let me read the receipts of our guests today. So just give me a second, y'all. We got Dr. Keisha. She is a scholar, researcher, international advocate of literacy education and student leadership development. I'm not done. Through her TED Talks, international conference lectures, research, keynote speeches, she brings a diverse perspective to educational research and parent-child reading aloud. Now, with all of the things that she's done, today we're just going to narrow in on one topic, and I promise you, I am going to have her back to go into the other things that she does extremely well. So welcome to the show, Dr. Keisha.
Thank you for having me. So delighted that we're having this conversation.
Yes, it is a much needed conversation because I keep hearing the word coaching is a buzzword now. Everyone is coaching, and I just kind of bring someone in that when I think of thinking and mindset, who comes to mind? And it was you. I kept seeing you on social media. We come from the same coaching space, and I was like, I need to have you on to better explain what mindset coaching is.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how did you end up transitioning from early childhood educator, researcher, international advocate to mindset coaching? Not that you don't do those things now, but in addition to all of that, what drew you into mindset coaching?
Oh no, absolutely. I definitely expanded to include that because COVID, like I love what I do as a consultant. I have been fortunate to support schools for 3 years, to do high-level keynotes with state-level agencies, to be a part of education policy at the highest levels in Paris, France. Like, I have been very fortunate in how I have moved through education. But when COVID happened, particularly that my focus within literacy education is diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial literacy, and those aspects of it, I kept encountering people who were still dealing with what they had experienced during the pandemic: anxiety, stress. They felt disconnected from their schools. I don't hear it talked about often enough, but there were a lot of teachers that felt like their schools did not care about them because they were consistently forced to go back in the classrooms with no PPE, no vaccines, like nothing. And that's when they realized that they were expendable. And I honestly think that's why we're seeing a lot of the great resignation waves that we're seeing within education, because a lot of trust was lost in how relationships were handled or mishandled during the pandemic. And one of the schools that I care deeply for and I work exclusively with in the capacity that I work with is a school out in San Francisco. And I was noticing that my conversations with the educators and the administrators were no longer just about education, curriculum, literacy. We were talking about their personal lives. We were talking about their stress. We were talking about how they were on the brink of giving up. Like, we were moving into the psychology of this, the whole person of this. And I was so fortunate to be admitted as a trainer, or selected as a trainer for an organization called Lion Story. And under that, I got to learn directly from Dr. Howard C. Stevenson. And he taught me this concept called CLCBE under racial literacy. Is like how we process racially stressful encounters in the body, in the moment. And he really directed me down this path of, well, what does it look like if we start dealing with stress in the body? And then from there, I started looking at, well, what does it look like if we bring in trauma? Because the people I was talking to, they had things that happened before COVID that was only making this moment more intense. And as I went further and further down this trail, the researcher in me, I start finding myself signing up for certifications and going deeper and deeper into it, into where I am now as a certified coach, a certified trauma specialist in terms of understanding stress, and going further with helping people process stress in the moment. So then you're in a space where you can hear.
Right.
I'm teaching you around diversity, equity, inclusion, racial literacy, because I can give you the best teaching in the education consulting side. But if you're worried about something that's going on in you, or something, God, shall we even go into it? Gun violence?
Yeah.
You know, like, you can't even focus on what I'm saying because you're still thinking about the active shooter drill. You're still worried that something could happen. So like, understanding how to mitigate all of that and then create a space for constructive learning is what really expanded me into this area.
And when I hear you talking, I remember my background is education, 20 years in the game. And I think this was the first time where actions needed to be aligned with words, because it's one thing to say, oh, we care for our teachers, we care for our educators. But during the pandemic, it was like, but if you care, why isn't our being at the forefront of the expectations that you're asking us? How could you expect the same teaching, the same learning, the same objectives, be judged by the same standards? How could you expect all of that and not think about how we're dealing mentally and with all that's going on? Some of that should have been removed. The expectations should have been removed, but it wasn't. And so that's why you saw a lot of teachers, educators having to make the decision, man, I entered into this profession because I love kids. I want to teach, but it's coming at a cost to my mental health. So you have to make that decision between, you know, doing something that I love, but also taking care of me first. A lot of teachers have had to make that decision. There's a lot that have stayed, and we're grateful because we still need amazing teachers in the classroom to teach. We do have to make that shift towards thinking about how trauma impacts the way we process, how we learn, how we teach, because kids for the first time experienced grief in a way that goes beyond just the loss of a loved one. It was the loss of consistency. It was a loss of schedule. It was a loss of knowing when I go to school, I'm going to go first, second. It was a loss of everything. It was loss of nothing, you know? And so, and we're still going through that. What would be your definition of specifically a mindset coach, and why do you think they're needed right now?
My definition of a mindset coach, I'm a trauma-informed mindset coach. So let me first, give us a baseline understanding of what I mean when I say trauma. And this is research-based. Trauma is anything the body and mind recognize as too much, too fast, too soon. And that's coming from Dr. Resma's work, his book, My Grandmother's Hands, And so understanding that anything that is recognized as too much, too fast, too soon. So when we think about, if we just limit ourselves to what we saw in the last 3 years, we had the COVID pandemic, then we had the attack on the Capitol and everything that former administration really revealed and stirred up within this nation's fabric. And then we had the social justice issues around immigration, around race, around poverty, right? And so you have all of these factors coming in, but then we had glimmers of hope. The other side of the Great Resignation is that entrepreneurship. People left these spaces. People decided, you know what, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna build this thing. Life is too short. Let me get out here, let me do what I feel I am called to do. Well, here's where the rubber meets the road. Whatever mindset you have that says, if you're gonna, let's look at you launching this amazing TV show. One of the first things, and this is probably gonna feel a little too close to home, so just, wink at a sister if you like, because it's getting too real.
Yes.
You get this opportunity and you hear the opportunity, and the first position is the mindset. Can I do this?
Yes.
Why me? What if I stumble? What if this isn't successful? What if I get out here and it falls apart? What if it's wildly successful and I can't sustain it?
Yes.
All of the self-talk. And depending on who's around you, that's one buffer, but it's more important in terms of how you begin to understand this within yourself and how you begin to release this from your body, because we like to think that our mind is the only part of us that is really determining the conversation, but it's a mind and body connection. Yes. So my mind can understand something and my body doesn't. Mm-hmm. And so I can get on here and I can do all the things, but I have a strong physical reaction. What is that? And so what I do as a trauma-informed mindset coach is bring people who are on the path to, are getting ready to start, or already at a high level of doing excellent things or wanting to do meaningful things. And I bring them in alignment with their mind and their body by showing them how to handle those moments, in how to handle that pressure, that tension in the moment, and then how to think through what it is they're trying to build and detangle whatever trauma residue is hindering their rationalization. Because depending on what you experience, and this is where my research as an early childhood literacy expert really came in, because I was amazed by how early childhood experiences affected our development. Yes. And that's what I use literacy really to bridge that gap and start healing parents from a 2-generational approach. Like, let me heal the parent by showing them through story how we can begin to circumvent what you didn't get as a child, so it doesn't hinder who you are as a parent or as a primary caregiver. Well, that research, that understanding is what really propelled me to go into mindset coaching, because I start seeing those same tendencies showing up amongst entrepreneurs, amongst leaders, particularly women of color. And I was just like, I kind of had my Gandalf moment, like, this will not pass. Like, here we have this opportunity to create great wealth, thanks to what we can do online, thanks to what we can do with social media, thanks to what we're doing with technology. Right. And it will not be hindered by yet another thing. We already deal with social justice and systemic structural racism. We are not going to allow mindset to be yet another thing that holds us back. And so that's how your girl got involved.
Oh my God, my God, oh my God. Okay. First of all, I had the back end of that question was, do you think you're needed? Yes, you're definitely needed. The other thing that I reflected on as I heard you talking was ACEs came into mind.
Yes, adverse childhood experiences.
But also needs not met as a child. Then my mind went to Denise Boggs. I met needs as a child and how that manifests and how that makes you an adult parent and all that. And so yes, it is. I definitely see how, and everything that you described about the example you gave about my opportunity to have my own show, and a lot of the things that I thought you hit them all. You hit absolutely all. And I still have some of those questions. I'm doing it anyway, but it's a constant reminder of the need for a mindset shift daily.
It's the chatter. That's what I attack as a trauma-informed mindset coach. Like, it's the chatter. It is teaching you how to recognize that voice, because the brain, the main responsibility of the brain is to make sure we survive. That's the whole reason why it's there. And of course it does some other great things, but its primary function is protect the body. Protect the body, make sure we don't get eaten. Right? That's the whole thing. So when things come up that are triggering, that are seen as threatening, particularly if our lower, they call it the reptilian brain. If that part of the brain that really controls the nervous system, the limbic system, not trying to get too detailed, but I geek out on the neuroscience. But the part of our brain, let's just call that the janitor for now. Okay. They have keys to everything. But the higher cognitive thinking, this is, the prefrontal cortex. This is where your rational thinking, your ability to think at a high level, your ability to look at time. That's happening up here. But at this lower level, it is, are we safe? fight, flight, or freeze, some of those things. And when we experience things like this opportunity, it first goes here, then goes up. And if the janitor decides that this is dangerous, it shuts the whole show down. And it never goes to the higher part of the brain. It goes immediately to survival.
Yeah.
And so you start operating on a subconscious level, right? That's one aspect of the importance of mindset. But let's just talk about the chatter that happens at the higher level of the brain. Past memories. If you have trauma, the worst thing about trauma is that it stops us from recognizing what happened in the past and what's happening in the future. It connects everything in this horrible loop of making you replay this bad thing, because when something traumatic happens, it's not stored in the regular part of the brain that usually carries memories, because that part of the brain has a time sequence to it. But the part of the brain that carries trauma does not have that time sequence. All it knows is that this happened, and it continues to happen. And healing from trauma is the ability to recognize that this happened in the past, but I am not the same person that this happened to, and I have the ability to treat this situation differently, or I don't even bring up what happened in the past. I can see this as a separate thing. That's the highest level of healing from trauma, but you need someone to coach you through that.
Yeah.
Because you cannot be the cause and the cure.
No.
The trauma.
No, you can't. And that you need tools, strategy, and someone that can challenge some of your thinking, that internal talk that only you hear. Because we talk to ourselves more than anyone else.
Yes.
And that past trauma could be past failure, past missed opportunity. And so you get another opportunity, and in your mind, you start thinking, oh, this could never be because of what happened last time.
Exactly.
You got to push through that and work towards having a better outcome.
Yes. Or an opportunity can come in the face of someone who may have hurt you in the past, or who may have characteristics of someone who reminds you of someone negative in the past, and you may have a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, and that trigger. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't know how, and that's where the CLCBE and those skills that I teach on how to process this in the moment, so you don't jump into a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Step back and then come into it once you calm down and centered yourself.
Yeah, it's that pause that's needed.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. Is there a difference, in your opinion, between a mindset and a limited belief?
Oh, yes. I would see a mindset as the landscape, and the landscape in terms of what you can build. Like, think of a field, like it has limitless possibilities, but it becomes whatever you make of it. Right. A limiting belief, those are the walls that you just start to put up around that landscape. That just determines how far you can go with whatever it is you start decorating your landscape with. So if I put up a building, but I put walls around it, then who goes in, who gets out?
Okay, I like that. So I think if you're listening to this, I'm pretty sure my audience is kind of getting a clue of what a coaching session would look like with you. I kind of want to go just a little bit deeper and kind of explain wait, let me just back up, because when I hear trauma informed, we usually attach that to trauma informed therapist, trauma informed counselor. I think first, you mentioning trauma informed coach is the first time I've ever had coach and trauma informed connect. Can you kind of go into a little more detail between the difference between a trauma informed therapist, what they help with, and a trauma informed coach, what they would help with?
Oh, absolutely.
What a rich conversation. Part one of my conversation with Dr. Keisha is I'm learning so much. And that book that she mentioned several books, but My Grandmother's Hands is a book I will definitely be checking out. We will continue part two of my conversation with Dr. Keisha tomorrow. This is Health and Wellness with Coach A.T. Moore. Thanks for watching.